Should you use subtitles to learn a language? When you're watching TV, watching movies, I generally don't recommend TV or movies for language learning. Now, before you throw me under the bus, let me explain why. Hello and welcome back to the Story Learning podcast. It's the podcast where we talk all about language learning. My name's Ollie. I've learned 8 languages. I've learned more than that, but I've learned 8 languages like to a good level, to a point where I can speak them. And my whole goal here with this podcast is to take the things I've learned about learning lots of languages in lots of different situations and parts of the world, and to try and convey that to you, so that if you're trying to learn your first, second, third new language, you have a little bit of support along the way, a few insights that can help you do it a little bit better. Here at Story Learning, we've been doing this since 2013, 13 years. And I say we because I have a fantastic team all around me of people that help us do all the things that we do. And I was thinking recently that I'm actually pretty chuffed that we're still here after 13 years, still doing what we do, and writing books, publishing content, helping people learn languages. It's a really great thing to be doing. I'm very proud of all the work we do. So anyway, this is just a way of me thanking you for being here, showing up and supporting the podcast. So should you use, a bit of a non sequitur here, should you use subtitles to learn a language? When you're watching TV, watching movies, should you be using subtitles? This has come up a whole bunch recently from videos on the main Story Learning channel, again, which we'll link below. If you're not a subscriber, please go and check that out. We publish weekly videos on language learning over there as well. And actually on that point, don't forget, if you're listening on the audio, you can actually watch the video version of this podcast right here. It's available in video format on Spotify, also on YouTube. So you might like to go over there and check that out. Comments are great. I read all of them. Often, a lot of the episodes I make here actually are in reply to comments that get left. So please do say hi. We love to hear from you. So I've got 6 comments in particular that have come in over the last few days from Fuzzy Badger 1943, Gibbon 04, Merle Bowers, Peter Jack, Gaming with Perg, and Quite British. Maybe that was me that wrote that comment. I don't know. They're all saying the same thing, which is when you watch TV or movies, should you use subtitles or not? Subtitles on, subtitles off, and subtitles in which language? Which subtitle audio language combination is best? Right, so I have got a rather controversial take on this, which is that I generally don't recommend TV or movies for language learning. Now, before you throw me under the bus, let me explain why. So the thing about TV and movies is that if you think about what's going on, it is you sat in a chair looking at a screen and probably reading subtitles on the screen, right? It's not interactive, it's very long, it's often quite difficult dialogue because it's stuff that's been created for native speakers. When we're thinking about material that is well suited for studying, for learning, that is not that, all right? And so while I've got absolutely no problem with sitting down in the evening and watching a movie or a TV series in your target language in order to just get exposure and be entertained or whatever, that's fine. But let's call it what it is. It's entertainment with a sort of surface level language benefit. What it is not is active studying. So when you get into trouble with TV and movies, what tends to happen is that you're confusing entertainment with actual learning. You're generally not learning when you're doing this, right? Real learning comes from active, focused engagement with the language, not you sitting, eating popcorn, or watching something on TV, right? Now, drilling down a level deeper, there is such a thing as TV and movies that are better for language learning than others. And I've produced a pretty cool resource, which is a big, long list of my favorite movies and TV shows in 15 different languages, which are great for learning, right? So if you're learning one of the 15 languages that we teach at Story Learning, go and get this. It's called The Best Binge-Worthy Resources. It's completely free. Link in the description. And I've just basically written down all of the TV shows and movies that I know that I think are actually quite useful for language learning, simply because of the subject matter, the tone, it's kind of a bit more user-friendly, a bit more accessible. You stand more of a chance of actually learning from those. So you can pick that up for free in the description, or if you're watching on video, you can scan the QR code as well. So I have got a couple of stories about TV and movies, which I'm going to tell you now, which are times when I have found it useful. So I'll tell you what those are, and then I'll tell you why I think it was useful and why it was effective, and then you can kind of make your own mind up, right? So the first story, which I tell quite often, is when I was learning Cantonese for the first time. And I was living in the Middle East, which is not the best place to learn Cantonese for obvious reasons. And I was really busy at work. I was kind of burned out. I've been doing too much studying. And I said to myself, you know what? I was trying to learn Cantonese every evening. It wasn't happening. I needed to take a break. So I said to myself, right, all I'm going to do is watch TV in Cantonese, because at least then I get some kind of exposure to the language, and then that's better than nothing, because the alternative for me at that point was just do nothing, and I didn't like that idea. So I found this TV show called Triumph in the Skies. It's about these pilots from Hong Kong who fly all over the world, and it's a love story. It's pretty cool. I have a soft spot for any kind of aviation type TV shows or movies, by the way. Maybe that's why I was drawn to that. Anyway, it's a gargantuan TV series. It's got like 80 episodes or something, and there's 2 seasons of it. So it's like 2 times 80 episodes. It goes on and on and on. And so basically, over the course of a couple of months, I just lay on the sofa in the evening and watched that thing. And I watched it in Cantonese with English subtitles. Now, why did I use English subtitles? Because as a beginner, which is what I was pretty much at the time, if I hadn't used subtitles, I would have understood precisely nothing. And what is the point of sitting on the sofa watching something for hours on end, days on end, weeks on end, when you understand nothing? Is that helpful? No. The whole principle of comprehensible input is that you learn when the message is understood, meaning that we want to be able to listen to things in the target language where we can actually understand what's going on. Not everything, but enough of it, because then we have context, and then we can learn, we can pick up new words, we can make connections with grammar, we can focus on other things like pronunciation, right? And so I watched it with English subtitles, so at the very least I could follow what was going on, and that put some of the language on the map for me, right? I was able to watch it, understand what was going on, and because of the volume of TV I watched in that scenario, right, it was many, many hours, I learned a fair bit, right? Because it was quite repetitive, same topics coming up over and over again, and I learned a whole load. And I remember having a Cantonese lesson a few months later after I finished watching that, and I remember my teacher said, "Man, she didn't say man, but she said, Ollie, your pronunciation has got so much better. You're speaking so much more fluently." And I thought, well, that's interesting. And the reason was that I just spent months just immersed in this TV show, and the language had gone from being quite unfamiliar, because I hadn't spent much time listening at that point, to becoming very familiar, and that had rubbed off on me. Great. So then why wouldn't I recommend that as a strategy? Simply because it was a huge amount of time, right? I don't think, like, watching months on end of TV is not how I want to spend my time. And if I had spent that same amount of time actually doing some proper focused study, I would have got way further faster. I also think there was a particular benefit for me at that point, because I just hadn't done much listening up until then, right? So the fact that I just did a whole bunch was really helpful. Anyway, that was an example of when I used target language audio with the English subtitles, and it was useful because it made it accessible and gave me a way in. Many years earlier, I remember I was in Brazil with some friends. I was staying with some friends in Rio, and we were all a bit sick, and we were sitting around watching a Woody Allen film. So my friends put on this Woody Allen film, and they were all learning English, right? And it was obviously an English language film. So they put on this Woody Allen film. They put it on in English with subtitles in Portuguese, because that was the same situation as my Cantonese example, right? For them, they wanted to improve their English, but they also wanted to understand what was going on in Portuguese. Fine, no worries. But what was interesting for me was that because I was like the bystander in this situation, right? I watched the film in English, so obviously I understood everything, but the subtitles in Portuguese I could read. And I learned a huge amount from that, even though it was just one film, because meaning was taken care of, right? Meaning that I was able to listen to Woody Allen speaking, and I understood what was going on. So meaning was like 100%. But then I got to see how that's expressed in Portuguese. And because it's subtitles, like, it was very concise, because because subtitles don't provide the full translation, there's not enough space, and so there's usually an abridged version of what's actually being said. And so this scenario, I was watching this film in my mother tongue audio, but the subtitles in Portuguese, and that was useful because I just got to see like how a lot of things were expressed. Now, funnily enough, some research backs up the efficacy of this. So there is a paper written by Jean-Marc Laveau, not quite sure how to pronounce that, Audiovisual Information Processing. This is a mouthful, the title of this paper. Okay, check this out. This is a classic academic-y language paper title. Audiovisual Information Processing by Monolinguals and Bilinguals, Effect of Intralingual and Interlingual Subtitles. My God. Anyway, basically he's talking about like, what kind of subtitle language combination works, right? Now, this was a study of native French speakers who spoke modest English. They were shown different versions of a film. One film was with standard subtitles, right? So these French speakers would watch the film in English with French subtitles. That's what I did in Portuguese, right? Then it was reversed. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. You've got to bear with me on this. So these French guys were watching an English film with subtitles in French. Okay, that's not what I did. Then there was another version where it was reversed. So they watched a French language film with English subtitles. That's the equivalent of what I did in Brazil, right? And then they showed the English film with English subtitles. And what the study found was they looked at who got the best results in being able to later reconstruct the film dialogue. So they sat them down and they said, look, let's reconstruct the dialogue from the film. Who was able to do that best in this study group? It was the group who watched the film in French with English subtitles. In other words, they watched the film in their native language audio, but had the subtitles in their target language on the screen. This is exactly what I did in Brazil when I watched the Woody Allen film in English and I saw the Portuguese subtitles on the screen. Isn't that interesting? And I think the reason that happens is because, as I said earlier, meaning is taken care of. When you're watching the film in your native language, you understand 100% of what's going on. There's no ambiguity. And so when you're seeing the subtitles in your target language, like you're able to really draw a lot of connections there, right? And actually learn something from how the subtitles are being articulated. So all of this is to say, there's different ways of doing it. But in every case, I would still, even though I've just told you 2 stories of how I kind of benefit from this, I would still maintain that it's generally just not a great use of your time because it's a very, very passive experience with very little repetition in there that you're not able to sort of sit down and actually get to grips with. All right. So let's talk about some rules of thumb, right? As a beginner, if you are going to, because I know you're going to sit down and watch TV anyway, regardless of what I say. And so you should. If you enjoy it and it's extra exposure, then all day long, don't let me stop you. If you are sitting down and watching a movie as a beginner in a new language, stick on the English subtitles. Don't torture yourself. There's absolutely no point sitting there watching a movie of which you understand nothing. It's a waste of everyone's time. Sure, you can listen to the language, but yeah, so what? You don't understand anything, it doesn't work. So put on the subtitles. And if you're gonna be doing it anyway, then put the subtitles on by all means. Like I said earlier though, just don't confuse it with actual studies. It ain't the same thing. And then I would say, once you get to an intermediate stage, meaning that you can understand a fair bit of what's going on, well then watch the film in the native language and put on subtitles in the language. All right, so you can actually listen and read at the same time. Is it going to be exactly the same? No, but it's better than having the English translation, the English subtitles, right? So as soon as you're able to, watch the film in the target language with subtitles in the target language. That's considerably harder. You're going to enjoy it considerably less, but obviously you'll learn a lot more. And then, whenever you feel ready, start to watch it without any subtitles at all. But, so if you're going to be watching TV anyway, then just do that. I think, the example I gave earlier and the example of subtitles, the French guys who watched the movie in French with English subtitles, proven to be the most effective, right? I think the best way to use that is simply to say, hey, whenever you're watching TV in English, assuming you're a native English speaker, see if there are subtitles available in your target language, right? So if you're sitting down and watching Netflix, let's say you're sitting down tonight and you're watching Breaking Bad in English, and you're an English speaker, and you're watching Breaking Bad because you want to watch it, go and see if they've got subtitles available in the language that you're learning and stick those on. Because if you can concentrate and if you can focus, you're probably going to find it quite useful. Anyway, in terms of what to watch, remember that you have my best binge-worthy resources available for download. Those will show you exactly what TV shows and movies that I recommend. And go and have some fun with it. Try subtitles in different combinations. But most of all, make sure that after you've had fun watching all that stuff, you then sit down and do some proper study, because that is going to do you a lot better in the long run. Thank you for listening, whether you agree with me or not. And I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast. Take care.